Danger might be closer than you think. Before we begin, like this video, comment where and what time you're watching from, and subscribe for more chilling stories. Now turn off the lights, get comfortable, and let's dive into the unknown. I'm a 34-year-old single mom, and this happened just last year in October. I work full-time at a dental clinic here in New Jersey, and at the tempo life was moving. I barely had time to clean my own house, let alone prepare it for my in-laws, who were coming to stay for the weekend. They're the kind of people who wipe their finger along baseboards and notice if the towels are folded unevenly. My son, Mason, was 5 at the time, curious, playful, and way too chatty for his own good. That week had already been chaotic, and in a desperate moment between patients, I searched Craigslist for local cleaners. I know, not smart, but when you're overwhelmed and running out of time, you do stupid things. The guy I hired was named Sean, or at least that's what he told me. He messaged me back within 10 minutes of my post and said he had experience, could come the very next morning, and didn't mind working solo. His profile picture was blurry, just a silhouette really, standing against a tall lake at sunset. But I was desperate and he sounded polite over the phone. He even joked that he'd make my mother-in-law think we lived in a magazine. I left the key for him in a small lockbox next to the side door, and he texted me when he arrived, then again when he was done. I got home that evening to a spotless kitchen, a lemony clean bathroom, vacuum lines on the rug. Everything looked perfect. I Venmo'd him and thanked him. Honestly, I felt kind of lucky. But then, over the next few days, little things started feeling off. At first, I chalked it up to my own forgetfulness. The full-length mirror in the upstairs bathroom was slightly tilted, not broken, just moved, like someone taller had adjusted it. One of the dining chairs was pulled out a few inches from the table, even though Mason never touches them, and I hadn't sat there since the cleaning. The first time it registered that something might be wrong was when I found my bedroom closet door ajar. I always close it. It's a habit, because I hate the feeling of waking up in the dark and seeing that crack. But I found it open when I got home from work. Not wide, just a few inches. Enough that I stood there for a full minute, frozen, staring into it. I didn't jump to conclusions. Not at first. I thought maybe Mason opened it while playing. Maybe I forgot to shut it all the way. But things kept piling up. A pair of earrings I hadn't worn in months ended up on top of my dresser instead of inside the little dish I kept them in. The hallway light was on when I got home one night, and I never leave it on. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, I picked up Mason from kindergarten, and as we were walking to the car, he casually said, "The cleaning man was here again today." I stopped mid-step. I hadn't scheduled a second visit. I asked him what he meant, and he just shrugged and said, he came inside and walked around a little. He didn't talk this time. I felt a cold thud in my chest that I still remember vividly. I tried not to panic in front of Mason. I laughed it off and asked him if maybe he was just pretending, or maybe he saw someone else outside. But deep down, I knew he wasn't lying. He wasn't a kid who made things up, at least not things like that. That night after I put him to bed, I went through the entire house. I checked all the windows, every lock, even the attic hatch, which I hadn't touched in years. Everything seemed in place, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I even opened the lockbox by the side door. The key was gone. That same key I had left for Sean. I had assumed he returned it to the box, but I never checked. Now I was staring at an empty compartment and realizing I had no idea who this man really was. The next morning, I called the number he had used to contact me, straight to voicemail. I messaged him on Craigslist. No reply. I clicked on his profile, and it was gone. Just like that. Vanished. My stomach dropped. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but something was seriously wrong. I called the non-emergency police line and explained the situation. They were polite but didn't seem particularly concerned. "Could be a misunderstanding," the officer said. "Change your locks if you feel uncomfortable." That night, I stayed up late scrolling through home security systems I couldn't really afford. I ended up dragging a chair in front of my bedroom door before I went to sleep, which sounds paranoid now, but at the time it felt like the only thing I could control. The next day, I took the afternoon off work and had a locksmith change every single lock in the house. I didn't tell Mason any of this. I just said we were getting new keys. I felt a little better afterward. That night, I was folding laundry on the couch when Mason walked in from his room and said, "Mommy, the cleaning man's car is outside." My body went completely still. I didn't even question him. I just stood up, walked to the front window and peeked through the blinds. There was a dark green sedan parked across the street. No lights on, no movement, just sitting there. It wasn't a neighbor's car. I knew every vehicle on this block, and I hadn't seen that one before. I turned off the living room light, gently pulled Mason close and whispered for him to go back to his room and stay there until I came to get him. My heart was beating so loud I could hear it in my ears. I grabbed my phone and took a photo of the car, then called 911. I kept the lights off and peeked from behind the curtain until I saw the red and blue lights flashing up the street. The moment they pulled up, the green car started slowly rolling away. I ran outside barefoot and waved at the officers, yelling, "That's him! That's the car!" One of them jumped back into the cruiser and followed, but the other stayed to talk to me. I showed him the photo, explained everything. He nodded and said something I'll never forget. "This guy wasn't just watching your house. He wanted you to know he was." That night I didn't sleep at all. Every little sound, the creak of the house settling, the wind brushing against the window, made me jump. Mason ended up falling asleep in my bed, clutching his favorite dinosaur plush, completely unaware of how serious things were. The police didn't find the car. They said he must have turned down one of the side streets or cut his lights to avoid being seen. They offered to patrol the neighborhood more frequently for the next few days, but that was it. No arrest, no follow-up, just be careful. The next morning I went through my house again, this time with the growing suspicion that maybe he had been inside, even when I was home. I found a faint muddy footprint just inside the back door. I hadn't noticed it before. That's when I bought a camera system on credit. I didn't care anymore about money. I needed to know. I installed them myself with a YouTube tutorial. Front door, back door, hallway, and one pointed at the side of the house, near Mason's window. That night I stayed up watching the live feed from my phone, switching between cameras obsessively. Nothing happened. Not the first night, not the second. I started to think maybe it was over. Maybe changing the locks and calling the cops scared him off for good. But on the third night, at exactly 3:12 a.m., I got a motion alert. I opened the app and froze. There he was, standing under the camera by the side of the house, staring straight up into it. He didn't smile, didn't wave, just looked at it. Then he covered it with a piece of duct tape. I don't know how long he was there. I called the police immediately, and this time I begged them to send someone fast. I was terrified he had found another way in. But by the time they arrived, he was gone. The tape was still on the lens, and this time they took it more seriously. They had a car stationed near my block for 3 nights in a row. I slept on the floor of Mason's room with a baseball bat next to me, and every creak in the night made my skin crawl. But after that night with the tape, he never came back. I don't know why. Maybe he realized I had nothing he wanted, or maybe the increased police presence spooked him. All I know is, it stopped, just like that. A week later, I checked Craigslist for his profile again. Not to contact him, I just needed to see if he existed. I searched for the photo, the name Sean, anything I could remember, but nothing came up. He was gone, like he'd never been there at all. I wish I could tell you the police found him, or that there was some satisfying explanation for everything, but there wasn't. I never found out who he really was, or how many times he might have been inside my home without me knowing. All I know is that I'll never, ever leave a key for a stranger again. Not even for 5 stars. Not even if they sound polite. Story 2. I was 25 when this happened, living in a small 1-bedroom apartment above a laundromat in the north part of town. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. I was working retail at a department store in the mall. Late shifts mostly, since I was one of the newer hires. I'd usually leave work around 10:30 p.m., sometimes later if we were closing registers or dealing with inventory. It wasn't uncommon for me to be the last one walking through the parking lot alone, fumbling with my keys and phone while dodging half-lit street lamps and oil-stained pavement. I had pepper spray on my keychain and this little silver flashlight my dad gave me when I first moved out. I always thought I was careful, I guess no one really thinks they're being watched until they know they are. This started on a Thursday night. I'd worked a double, and my feet were killing me by the time I clocked out. The parking lot was mostly empty except for a few scattered cars under flickering poles. When I got to my car, there was a sticky note on my driver's side window. It was this bright neon pink square, like the ones we used in the fitting rooms for counting clothes. I remember that specifically because I thought maybe it was from a coworker playing a prank. But when I read it, I stopped cold. It said, "Beautiful smile, followed you from inside." Just like that. Black Sharpie, neat handwriting, and that little smiley face at the end that somehow made it worse. At first I actually laughed, not because it was funny, but because it felt so ridiculous, like something out of a bad Netflix thriller. I looked around, kind of, half expecting someone to jump out and say it was a joke, but the lot was empty. Just the humming of the overhead lights and a distant car horn somewhere down the road. I got into my car, locked the doors immediately, and sat there for a minute before starting the engine. I told myself maybe someone thought it was flirtatious, maybe it was a weird joke from someone at work. But that note, the way it was worded, "Followed you from inside," that didn't feel like a pickup line. That felt like a warning. The next day, I mentioned it to one of the girls in the break room, Allison. She raised her eyebrows and said she hadn't seen anything, but offered to walk out with me after our shift just in case. That night, we left together, and nothing happened. No notes, no weird cars, nothing. I started to think maybe I'd overreacted. But then Saturday rolled around, and everything changed. I had a closing shift again and parked in the same spot I always did, near the west side entrance by the dumpsters. When I finished and walked to my car, there it was. Another sticky note. This one was yellow. It said, "You always wear black jeans. They look good on you." My hands were shaking as I pulled it off the glass. That's when I noticed the same car parked a few spaces down. A dull blue Camry with no front plate. It was the same car I'd seen 2 nights earlier, just as I was pulling out of the lot. I remembered it because one of its headlights had this foggy, yellowish haze that made it look like the car was winking. Back then, I didn't think much of it, just a beat-up car like any other. But now, sitting there with its windows completely blacked out, engine off, and no sign of movement, it felt different. I didn't even get in my car right away. I turned and walked back toward the store like I forgot something, just to see if the car would react. And it didn't. It just sat there, dark and silent, like it was watching me. I stayed inside for another 15 minutes and called my friend, Jesse, who was working at the juice place across the mall. He offered to come walk me out. We left together, this time heading out a different exit. The Camry was still there, but now it had moved a few spots closer to where my car was. I didn't say anything to Jesse until we got in the car, but the panic was rising in my throat. That night, I didn't sleep much. I kept thinking about the way the notes were written. Friendly tone, no threats, just observation. But that's what made it worse. This person knew things about me. What I wore when I left work, that I smiled. The next morning, I checked around my apartment building before leaving for my shift. Nothing unusual. But when I got back home that night, I found a sticky note on the door to my unit. It was orange this time, just said, "Found you." I froze, my knees actually felt weak. I live on the 2nd floor, there's a locked entry to get into the building and then stairs to my unit. For someone to leave a note on my door, they had to have gotten inside. That meant they knew where I lived. I stood there for a long time, just holding my groceries and staring at the note like it was going to explain itself. Eventually, I went in. Checked every closet, every corner, every space under the bed. Nothing, no sign of forced entry. But the lock on my window, the one in the bedroom facing the alley, was slightly turned. Not unlocked, but not the way I left it. I took a picture of the note and texted it to my landlord, asking if anyone had been inside the building that day. He said no one had reported anything. The next few days were a blur. I barely ate. I kept checking over my shoulder while walking anywhere, and every sound outside made my heart jump. At work, I asked if there were security cameras in the parking lot. Turned out there were, but they were old, grainy, and barely captured anything past a few feet from the entrance. Still, I asked to review the footage. My manager helped me pull it up, and after some scrubbing, we found it. A person in a dark hoodie walking up to my car the night of the first note. The footage was too low res to catch their face. They moved quickly, almost too casually. But there was something deeply unsettling about how smoothly they did it. Like they'd done this before. Like they knew no one was watching. That same night, I drove to my friend Jesse's place and asked if I could crash there for a few days. I didn't even explain everything at first. I just said I wasn't comfortable at home. He didn't ask questions, just handed me a blanket and made up the couch. The next morning, I filed a report at the local police station. I showed them the photos of the notes, the video footage, and explained everything in detail. They were professional, but I could tell they thought it was just some creepy guy playing games. Unless there's a direct threat, one officer told me, it's hard for us to do much. They took my statement, gave me a case number, and told me to call if anything. Escalated. That word, escalated, kept echoing in my head for the rest of the day. I didn't go home for almost a week. Jesse kept me distracted, made me laugh, cooked pasta like he was on a cooking show. But part of me was always on edge. On the 6th night, I worked up the courage to go check on my apartment. Jesse insisted on coming with me. We walked up the stairs slowly, keys in my hand, heart in my throat. When I opened the door, everything seemed untouched. Nothing on the floor, no signs of anyone having been there. I exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. But then, taped to the inside of my bedroom window, on the glass, facing in, was a sticky note, blue this time. It just said, "You brought someone." I screamed. Not out of shock, but out of pure rage and fear that had been building for days. Jesse ran into the room and saw the note. We didn't speak. We just left. Drove straight to the police station again, this time not as calmly. I demanded that they send someone to sweep the place. When 2 officers followed us back, they did a full check. Again, no signs of forced entry. But one of them did find boot prints on the fire escape just outside my bedroom window. They called in a technician to dust the glass, but the prints were smudged, partial. Useless. That was the final straw for me. I packed everything I could in 2 hours and stayed with Jesse until I found a new place. Different part of town. New locks, new number, even a new job at a store across the city. I never found out who it was. The police never followed up, and I never got another note. Sometimes I wonder if the person just got bored and moved on, or if they're still out there, watching someone else now. I still have the stack of notes, tucked away in a box I never open. Part of me keeps them as proof that it really happened, because if I didn't have those, I don't know if anyone would believe me. It still messes with me how calculated it all was. They never touched me, never broke. They just got close enough to remind me that they could. Story 3. I was 36 when I moved into that house, fresh off a divorce, emotionally drained, and looking for a quiet place to rebuild. The neighborhood seemed ideal, tucked away in a sleepy corner of town, lined with small single-story homes and tall whispering trees, the kind of place where porch lights glow warm in the evenings, and neighbors wave when they see you taking out the trash. It was summer, hot and dry, and I remember thinking that maybe this could actually feel like a reset. Just me, a rental house with a creaky back deck, and a lot of silence. Exactly what I thought I needed. A few days after I moved in, my next-door neighbor introduced himself. His name was Lenny. Mid-50s, thin frame, always in the same faded red flannel even in the heat. He had a ponytail that didn't match the top of his balding head, and he spoke in this overly calm, soft voice, like he was always 2 seconds from whispering. He offered to help me set up some shelves in the garage and insisted I take his number in case anything came up. I appreciated the gesture, even though there was something off about him. Not in an obvious way, just this tension, like his friendliness was practiced, controlled. We exchanged numbers that night. I figured it was normal around here. Neighbors looking out for each other, especially on a quiet street. He texted me shortly after with a simple, "Welcome to the neighborhood. Let me know if you need anything." But then I started noticing something weird. Every night around 2 or 3 a.m., I'd hear this metal groaning noise. At first I thought it was the wind or an animal knocking something over, but it happened too often and always at the same time. I finally realized it was Lenny's garage door. It would open, stay up for maybe 10-15 seconds, then close. Same pattern, every night. On the fourth night, I got curious enough to look. I went into my bathroom, which had a small window, facing the side of Lenny's house, and waited. I didn't even have to wait long. Just before 3 a.m., I heard it. The clunk of the mechanism and the slow whir of the garage door rising. I pressed my forehead to the glass. The lights inside the garage were off, but I could make out movement. 2 figures. They stepped out and crossed the yard toward Lenny's back door, but only one of them went in. The other just paused. It stood there for a few seconds, then disappeared into the shadows beside the house. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I stood at my kitchen window sipping lukewarm coffee, just staring at his garage. It looked so ordinary in daylight. Gray siding, rusty handle, a broom leaning lazily against the wall. But I couldn't shake what I saw. 2 people went in, but only one entered the house. Maybe I miscounted. Maybe the second figure went around to another door. But there was something about the way it moved. Stiff, hesitant, like it wasn't used to walking in open space. That image stuck with me. Still, I told myself not to spiral. I had just gone through hell emotionally. Maybe my mind was still playing tricks, so I brushed it off. Until the text. It came that night, around 9:17 p.m., just as I was cleaning up dinner. Unknown number. The message just said, "Stay inside. He brings people into that garage." I remember reading it out loud like an idiot, just to hear it said. My stomach dropped. I wanted to believe it was spam, a prank. But how would a random scammer know about that? I didn't reply. I didn't even move. I just stood there at the sink for a solid minute, hands dripping, eyes fixed on the screen. I double-checked the locks, shut the curtains, and sat on the couch with every light off, waiting to hear something. That night, the garage didn't open. No sound at 3 a.m. Nothing at all. And weirdly, that was worse. I kept pacing from window to window, looking through the blinds like I was waiting for a thunderstorm to roll in. The silence felt heavy, like something was holding its breath. I thought about calling the police, but what would I even say? My neighbor opens his garage too much. No one had done anything illegal. But that text, someone knew something, and now I knew something, and that changed everything. That kind of knowledge sticks to your skin. The next day, I couldn't focus on anything. I kept replaying the moment those 2 figures stepped out of the garage. I drove to the grocery store just to get out of the house, but even in the daylight, I felt like I was being watched. I parked at the far end of the lot, and when I came back out, I swear I saw that same faded red flannel through a car window. Just for a second. Then it was gone. I didn't even check. I just got in my car and drove straight to a hardware store, bought a motion light and a cheap camera, and spent the rest of the afternoon installing them like I was prepping for war. That night, I left the hallway light off and kept the living room window cracked open just an inch. The motion light I installed lit up the side of my house perfectly, including the small patch of grass that bordered Lenny's garage. I sat on the floor with my phone in one hand and a baseball bat in the other. Yeah, dramatic, I know, but I wasn't taking chances anymore. Around 2:58 a.m., the light clicked on. I scrambled to check the feed on my phone. The camera was grainy, cheap as hell, but I could make out movement. Lenny, walking out of his garage, holding something large over his shoulder. It looked like a tarp. He dragged it toward the back of his property and disappeared into the darkness. I didn't sleep after that. I saved the clip and sent it to myself, just in case. First thing that morning, I called the non-emergency police line, told them I was a new resident, had seen strange activity, and had footage that felt off. An officer came by that afternoon. Young guy, polite, seemed like he'd rather be anywhere else. I showed him the clip. He watched it twice and said it wasn't illegal to walk around your own property at night. I asked if it wasn't at least suspicious to be dragging something human-sized in the dark. He shrugged. Could be yard waste. Could be furniture. But he said he'd make a note of it. That was it. I didn't expect much to come from it. But a few days later, Lenny's house was swarming with unmarked cars and uniforms. No sirens, no shouting, just quiet, deliberate presence. I watched from my window as they carried out boxes, computers, what looked like rolled-up rugs. Then, later that night, I got a knock on the door. A plainclothes detective asked if I was the one who made the report. I nodded. and he gave me this look, like half gratitude, half pity. He didn't go into detail, just said, "There were people in that garage. You did the right thing." I never saw Lenny again. Don't know if he was arrested, disappeared, or if he even lived under that name. The house stayed empty for months after. Grass overgrew, mail piled up, lights never came on. Eventually, a for sale sign went up, but no one ever bought it. Not while I was there anyway. I moved out the following spring. Even now, I don't like to think about what might have happened if I hadn't trusted that gut feeling, or if that anonymous text had never come through. Some nights I still wake up at 3 a.m., expecting to hear that garage door rising again.